Hello everyone, welcome to our webinar today about e-commerce bookkeeping, breaking it down. We're going to have a look at month-end Shopify bookkeeping. I'm really excited to be co-hosting this webinar with Natasha. My name is Elspeth and I'm the UK go-to-market manager at A2X, but I also have a background in e-commerce bookkeeping. And then Natasha, I'll hand over to you just to tell us a bit more about yourself.
Hi, I am Natasha and I'm the owner of Bewitching Bookkeeper, a proud sole practitioner. My clients can be anything from e-commerce to shop owners in the streets and fish and chip shops. But I have a really passion for learning e-commerce and actually taking that to the next stage when I relaunch my business later this year.
Brilliant. Okay, so the agenda for today is going to be a brief introduction to Shopify and its significance for e-commerce bookkeeping. Basically, if you can master Shopify, you'll find any of the other platforms a lot easier. We're going to look at understanding Shopify's financial data, setting up your bookkeeping system for Shopify and which tools you want to use for that, the information you need for month end. So we're going to give you a checklist, and then we're going to walk through the month end reconciliation process. And then at the end, we're going to do question and answers. So if you do have questions, pop them in the chat as we go along, and we'll try to address some of those at the end. We'll also have a little chat with Natasha at the end and ask her about some of her processes. Okay, so a quick overview of Shopify. I've picked Shopify for this webinar because it is the most complex in terms of e-commerce platforms. But it's also really popular because it's so customizable. Sellers really like it. It was founded in 2006. It's very user-friendly and it tries to be a one-stop shop for online sellers. Oftentimes when you're buying something online, you'll be on a Shopify store without completely realizing it. Why do sellers like Shopify so much? Again, it's to do with the customization and the kind of community that they have. You can easily add your products, you can manage them. Order management is good in Shopify. Payment processing is a big one. If you sell on Amazon, you're limited to Amazon payments, but if you sell on Shopify, you can add all kinds of payment gateways, PayPal, Stripe, you can have a point of sale unit. There's lots of different setups you can have. They have marketing tools that they offer sellers, a lot of analytics and reporting in terms of detailed reports on different sales and different areas of your business. And they're very scalable. So you can start really small in Shopify and you can get really big. But they also have quite an active community and support, and they really are pro online sellers. What is the significance for e-commerce bookkeepers and accountants? I would say Shopify is a real area to target if you want to do e-commerce bookkeeping at the moment. It's really popular among online sellers, and it's a real opportunity for bookkeepers who can specialize in this platform. As I've said a little bit earlier, if you can master Shopify bookkeeping, you can tap into a growing market and expand your services. Because it's highly customizable, that can sometimes be challenging on the accounting side. But if you can master it, it really is a valuable opportunity. If you can do Shopify, as I said, the others will feel really easy. When you've got good numbers and you've done a really good job on the Shopify bookkeeping side, it really gives your clients the essential information that they need to be able to make good decisions about how to move the business forward, and then even potentially sell their business in the future if they want to. And you can really position yourself as their trusted advisor once you've got your head around everything. So understanding Shopify's financial data, credits the ledger gurus on this because I think it's a really good infogram about how it all works with Shopify. So you start up at the top with your sales orders. Those sales may include discounts, various types of tax, could be VAT, could be US sales tax, shipping charges, other transactions, and then those are all feeding into Shopify. If you go on your Shopify store, you'll see orders coming in throughout the day. They're just on that main order page. Obviously, that will all be collated together, but then the difference between Shopify and something like Amazon is that money will then be dispersed via different payment methods. So one customer may have paid for their order via PayPal, one of the customers may have paid via Shopify payments, and one may have paid on a point of sale unit. The reason that's important from a bookkeeping side is you'll see different deposits to the bank account. You won't just have one Shopify payments deposit. You might have a PayPal payout. You might have a manual payout from a wholesale order. And having your eye on all of that is quite important for Shopify. Looking at Shopify payments to start with, you may see on, say, your Xero, your QuickBooks bank feed, money coming in from Shopify payments. For example, in this case, we said £14,081. We would see some sellers that would just reconcile all of that to sales, but they're actually a combination of sales fees, refunds, disputes, gift card balances, and other transactions. And so if you code the entire payout to sales or an income account, it's actually incorrect. Doing so could cause you to underreport revenue, sales tax, VAT. It can create quite an issue, and it also skews your P&L. So you don't really have a good picture of how profitable the business is. So if you take that payout and you correctly categorize it, then you'll see that it's actually made up of lots of different transactions. Some will need to go to your tax liability accounts, some will go to shipping income, some will go to your gift card liability, etc. And then you'll also have deducted from that amount before it hits the bank your Shopify fees. So you need to be aware of that when you see that on the bank account. Just know that that means that actually a lot more is going on in that number than you might initially think. The other thing with Shopify payments particularly is that they may not align perfectly with monthly bookkeeping periods. You can have a crossover, so you could have one that goes July to August. It's important to know this for Shopify bookkeeping because you want to make sure that your sales are actually accounted for in the correct months and that those are aligned with your cost of goods sold particularly, because it will give you the best P&L report at the end of the day. Payment gateways, as we've mentioned with Shopify, you can have diverse payment methods. PayPal, Stripe, Klarna, point of sale, multiple point of sales. Shopify is really good at feeding those all into its main finance engine. Using these payment gateways is really popular with merchants. They can give their customers different options. So buy now, pay later with Klarna, PayPal. A lot of people like PayPal. So that's one of the reasons why merchants like it. But they do add complexity to Shopify bookkeeping because of the different processing fees and different transaction timelines. And that can make it challenging to reconcile the accounts. Each gateway may have its own unique way of reporting sales, refunds, and fees. And that means that you just have to have an extra bit of an eye out on those. This is the Shopify finance summary. You'll find this in Shopify. I do recommend getting your seller client to give you access to Shopify so that you can see this report. It's really what we at A2X would say is the gold standard report in Shopify in terms of knowing what went in, what came out, in terms of knowing what all your payments are for the month. We really recommend this, and we have a mirror report in A2X where you can do a side-by-side comparison. And with our report, you get some extra reconciliation tools you can use if you see any differences. And we'll talk about that in a minute. You can go through and start clicking into actual orders, and it's really a really good tool that a lot of our account and bookkeeper partners like using. So to find that report in Shopify, you go to Shopify Analytics Reports Summary. Bang, you're there. So just before we go on to the checklist, obviously you're going to be setting up your bookkeeping system for Shopify if you haven't already. You'll have your accounting software at the center. That could be Sage, it could be Xero, it could be QuickBooks, it could be NetSuite. Your customer may have an inventory management system like Unleashed or Sin7. If they're not at the IMS stage yet, then they can use A2X COGS if they're using A2X as an in-between stage. You'll have your payment processing and reconciliation tools. So, for your supplier invoices, you might want to use HubDoc or Dext or one of these options. And then A2X can really help you on the sales side, just consolidate everything. And again, we'll touch on that again in just a second. Sales tax and VAT submission assistance. You really need to think about this if your seller is selling in the EU or North America, basically outside the UK. When you're selling in the UK, if you just have UK VAT requirements, no problem. You'll be doing it through your Xero MTD VAT return or your Sage VAT return or your QuickBooks VAT return. But if they have US sales tax or EU VAT and you want help submitting that, then Taxtra and Everard can be really helpful, or somebody like that, Simply VAT. And then you'll probably have your reporting and analytics tools just for your own reporting, cash flow, all that kind of thing that you're doing. I think we always really recommend getting access to the payment platforms. So if your seller is on PayPal, Klarna, and Stripe, really good to have access to that so you can download payouts if you need to, or check things on the statements. Another option is to get them to provide you with the statements, but sometimes it can just be easier if you can log in and see it yourself. Okay, so I'm going to give you a really quick run through of what A2X does on the sales side, just because this is the fastest way to do the sales side for Shopify. But obviously we'll talk about manual processing as well a little bit later on in the webinar. So what does A2X do? It basically pulls all of the uncategorized sales fees, refunds, taxes from Shopify, and it consolidates it all into easy to match back to the bank account invoices in Xero, or journals in QuickBooks, or invoices again in Sage, depending on which system you use. It will auto-categorize the data into accurate summaries that span the right time periods. So as we spoke about earlier, a Shopify payment can span 2 months. So A2X will automatically slice and dice it into 2 invoices for you so that your all of your sales and expenses are accounted for in the correct month, just to keep your P&L really tight. And again, you'll see them all go to the right places on the chart of accounts. We'll see that in just a second. It will match back. So those Shopify payments, the amount that hit the bank, we've got an example here, will match back to the amount that was deposited that you see on your bank feed. It'll give you increased visibility with detailed profit and loss statements you can trust, again, with the correct numbers in the correct month. You can see an example here. It's a little bit small, but you can see where this seller has Amazon, eBay, and Shopify. We've got separate sales and refunds accounts for all of those. You can see the COGS are separated by platform. And if you wanted to, you could run a mini P&L just for eBay or just for Amazon. If your seller really likes to, maybe they've got a dashboard or something that you're plugging figures into, that can be really useful. Again, just support on the A2X side. If you want to branch out into Shopify bookkeeping, we really do have a really good community of other bookkeepers and support on the UK side that we can help you. So don't get stuck, don't feel alone, don't cry when you get overwhelmed about Shopify bookkeeping. Come and talk to us and we can help. Okay, so this is a checklist of all the things it's ideal to have when you're going to start your month-end process for Shopify. We are going to go through this really quickly, and we're going to touch on lots of different topics as we go. If you're new to this, don't feel overwhelmed. It may take a couple of times of looking at these processes to really kind of get your head around them. And that's okay. I mean, I think we've all had that experience when we've learned anything new in bookkeeping. And the good news is we have a lot of this support material totally free on our website. We've got our end of month checklist for Shopify. You can go check that out if you need, if it's helpful for you to have a list. I find it helpful personally, or to create my own checklist. You can create your own checklist from that. We also have loads of webinars. So today we're going to touch on lots of different aspects. We're going to talk about inventory, we're going to talk about VAT, and we're going to go through it all as a checklist. But if you want to dive deeper into something like Shopify VAT, we do have specific materials around that you can use, again, completely free. There's a whole webinar out there on Shopify VAT on YouTube that you can watch if that's something that's that you're interested in at the moment. So A list of things you need. Access to your Shopify store is ideal. That will give you the chance to go and see your finance summary report, drill down into different sections, access to A2X if you're using it to reconcile Shopify, and then obviously access to your accounting system. You're going to want your monthly bank and or credit card statements just to check your balances at month end. Shopify finance summary for the period. You can run that report that we spoke about earlier. Good to have that up in one screen because that's what you're shooting for in the accounting system. Loan transactions, you will want your records about that. If they do have a loan, not always applicable, but sometimes they do. Merchant account statements or access to Klarna, Sezzle and PayPal, any other payment methods that they're using. Pending payment status, that's important. We'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. Bills and receipts, so anything they've paid for during the month outside of the e-commerce platform, supplier bills, all of that kind of stuff you're super used to dealing with. Logins to additional apps can be helpful. For example, some sellers are using things like Returnly or Loop for returns. So having access to that can help you if that's present in your scenario. Up-to-date product costs, you definitely want a list of, it doesn't have to be complicated, a spreadsheet with one column that says SKU and another column that says the up-to-date cost is, that's a great place to start. And a list of manual orders, we'll talk about that in a minute as well. That just depends on whether that's happening in that store, but we'll address that when we get to that point. Okay, so we're going to go through this step by step. The first thing that we're going to do before we do anything else is we're going to send our sales, income, other transactions from A2X to 0. So if you are using A2X for Shopify, you'll see a list of Shopify payments. You can see them here. These are the amounts that we know will have hit the bank. And as we said before, we don't want to reconcile those amounts just to sales. We want to make sure that they're broken down into their correct categories. Any payout that's labeled as Shopify payments will match perfectly to the bank deposit. And once you set up your A2X account, you can just go to the payouts and send them across, or you can enable auto send on your account. If you like to send them, if you like to review them first, you can switch off auto send, review them before you post them, and then send them over. Once you've sent them over, if you've got auto approve invoices switched on, you'll just go to the bank feed in Xero or whichever accounting system you're using, and you'll match to the invoice that we've just sent across. And that is basically the whole process for reconciling the Shopify payments. So the second piece in Shopify, which isn't present in Amazon or eBay or Etsy, is the transactions that come through via other payment gateways. So Afterpay, PayPal, Klarna, etc. These do need to be treated slightly differently than Shopify payments because A2X can't fetch fees charged by the payment processor. You basically follow the same process if you're using A2X, or you post your own invoice if you're doing it manually. You'll post them across for the other payment gateways. And what will happen is you'll have a clearing account in the accounting system. I'm using Xero as the example here, but it could be any accounting system. And it will post the gross sales as a debit to the clearing account. So you'll have an amount sitting on the clearing account that is awaiting payment. Now, this is a bit of a debate for those amongst us who are really like to get into the nitty-gritty, but with A2X, you can summarize third-party payment methods either daily, weekly, or monthly. Monthly is nice because it ties back exactly to that total on the finance summary, which is quite nice, rather than having multiple invoices that get you to that number. But to be honest, I've done quite a bit of reading on this because we get asked about it quite a lot. I think the best approach for other payment gateways is to have a daily summary for UK sellers. I think it's best aligned with what HMRC seems to want at the moment. But A2X can do that for you. It'll give you a daily summary. You have a debit to the clearing account for each day, which is the total gross sales for that day. Again, we've got lots of videos around this piece, so don't worry. This is just a general overview of how it works. When the payment gateway deposit comes through to the bank feed, you then post it to the clearing account. This is the credit side entry, and you can set up a bank rule to automate the process. Later in these month-end steps, we'll post a journal for the total payment processing fee expense for the month. This will credit the clearing account and debit payment processing fees and clear your account down to zero again. So you're using the clearing account really as a control account for these payment methods. I hope I haven't lost you all. That's a slightly complicated bit. Now, this is a straightforward bit. You'll all be really familiar with this part. This is the next section on our month-end process. You're going to add all your normal supplier invoices and other monthly transactions to the accounting system, raising the relevant bills, etc., as you normally would do. This is regardless of whether they are directly related to the Shopify e-commerce sales and transactions. During this step, it's also important to account for any accrual-based activities, ensuring that the bills which are tracked and subsequently paid are accurately reflected in the correct month in your financial records. Bank reconciliation, again, you're all really familiar with this. You'll navigate to the bank reconciliation screen and begin your bank rec, match invoices and bills to payments and deposits. You already have matched off the Shopify payment deposits earlier when you sent them through. And then the other payment gateway deposits will already be approved and ready because they'll have gone to the clearing accounts. You can tidy up your bank rec by reconciling any additional transactions such as bank fees and transfers until the whole month is caught up. Always a good feeling. Okay, so here's where we're going to look at costs. So costs are important to help you have an accurate P&L for the month. It's really important to kind of engage in that as the bookkeeper on these Shopify stores. But also keep in mind that this part of the process can be quite challenging. So try not to be a perfectionist about it if you can. You can get really, really sucked into this, but we're dealing with in real life products, and sometimes they do just go missing. And sometimes you just have to adjust for it. So don't beat yourself up too much about this. Aim to get it as right as you can. And then give yourself a little bit of a break because it can be quite difficult. You do need to have some kind of resource to track your product costs. It could be a spreadsheet, as I said, really simple, just be a spreadsheet with SKU and cost. It could be an IMS system if they're using Unleashed or something like that. So you want to review this list that you have and make sure that your product costs are correct. And then if you're going to use the COGS feature in A2X, you would upload it to A2X. And again, it's a really simple upload, SKU, cost, upload it. A2X COGS feature at the moment is a static system. So it means that when you upload it, you'll need to refresh any payouts that you want that to apply to that haven't come in yet to A2X. Just keep this in mind if your product costs change frequently. Like if your suppliers are changing their costs often. Most people use an average blended cost for this. And we do have a good article about this on the website if you want to read more. Okay, so if you're going to use A2X for COGS and you can switch it on or off, you can use it or not use it. It is good for before your seller gets to the point where they need an IMS system. Our COGS feature can be really good. It's going to reduce the inventory asset account by the actual cost of goods sold, and the expense will be posted to your COGS expense account, and it will even out your P&L for the period. You can manually do that, so you can enter your own manual. If you've got your own spreadsheet that you're running and you want to do it manually, you can enter your own journal for that. So the next step, once you've done that and you've sent it all across, the next thing is to review your month-end inventory balance. COGS is an expense line on your profit and loss. Inventory is an asset line item on your balance sheet. Inventory that sits on your balance sheet will eventually move to the P&L as items are sold. And as I said, A2X kind of does that automatically for you if you use the COGS feature. However, regular in real life inventory counts are necessary. Try and help your client to get in the habit of doing that. It's important to record any inventory losses at this point that occur outside of Shopify. For example, items that go missing. This is to keep the inventory values in check, so you have a correct, as close as you can on the balance sheet of how much inventory you have. You also want to review returned quantities and make adjustments where necessary. If you're using the A2X COGS feature, it doesn't adjust for returns because we don't know if the item is resellable. By the end of this year, we'll have an opt-in feature that will allow you to adjust for returns if you choose to. But just be aware of that because you may want to put in a little journal at this point for anything that you know has been returned. And if you're using an IMS system, it's going to be more about looking at the entries that they've posted across to the accounting system and making sure that you're comfortable and it all makes sense and you're happy with that. In which case you would, if you're using IMS, an inventory management system, you'll want to switch off A2X COGS. One thing just to flag up is with Shopify, you quite often have people gifting products to influencers, for example, who are boosting their sales, which is awesome. If that's how your business is running, it's great. And we do see it a lot. Usually what people do in Shopify is they have different workarounds for what they do with influencer gifts. Quite often see that someone will post it as an order and then 100% discount it. If they do that, then it will trigger, for example, if you're using A2X COGS, it will trigger a COGS adjustment, which is quite nice. And then it will post the expense to cost of goods sold when you push the cost of goods sold through. The only thing is you may want that cost of goods sold to go to marketing expenses or something like that rather than COGS in that particular scenario. So it's possible to do that, but you may want to put in your own journal to adjust. One really cool thing you can do with Shopify is add order tags. So if your seller is doing influencer gifts, it might be worth just suggesting to them that they add an order tag, like influencer as the order tag. And then it will make it much easier for you to calculate what that amount is at the end of the month if you want to adjust it. Okay, so now you've pushed across all your sales, you've pushed across all your cost of goods sold, and now you're going to want to have a look at the finance summary. If you're using A2X, you can run the Shopify finance summary, you can run the A2X finance summary, and then you can just do an initial run of your zero P&L, and just make sure it's all looking consistent in terms of total sales, etc. If you notice any differences, then check that all the A2X entries have been sent to zero and you don't have any duplicates. If you still notice differences, and you may have small differences, which can be about timing or order edits, we're going to speak about that in a minute, then you can, if you're using A2X, you can use the Shopify reconciliation report. It's really cool. You can drill down and it'll tell you exactly the orders that are causing the difference. A lot of our accountants and bookkeepers really like that feature. One of the things that does crop up is order edit orders. Shopify allows order editing right up to the last minute and even after the fact. And from an accounting point of view, that's really challenging that is possible on Shopify. We have a special webhook once you're connected to Shopify where we pick most of it up. But it can impact your revenue tracking. So without wanting to just go really deep into this, what you can do if you're using A2X, you can run the Shopify finance summary and you can run the A2X finance summary. And if you see small differences, you can use the reconciliation tool to find the orders. And if you want to make small adjustments, you can at that point. It usually gives you the transactional information to do that. Moving on to step 9 is manual orders. Manual orders generally happen if your seller is selling some wholesale via their Shopify store. This happens fairly often. So maybe they have grown their business and they were just selling on Shopify, but now they have some orders from a high street retailer and they decide to push that through Shopify. Because Shopify is kind of a one-stop shop now for online sellers, that does happen quite often. The important thing to know is if you're going to use a tool like A2X and they raise that manual order in Shopify, it will come through. So you will account for that sale. Sometimes what we see people doing is they'll also raise an invoice in Xero for that. And you just need to keep an eye on that, make sure that's not happening, because that could create a double posting of those sales. This is another good candidate for order tagging, getting them to add tags like wholesale or manual to their orders. The other thing to be aware of these is just having a good process with your seller on them. So when a manual order is raised in Shopify, it will go to pending balances until they go in and mark it paid. So when they see the money hit the bank account, they could go into Shopify and mark it paid. If they don't mark it paid, it will sit in pending. I'm going to speak about that a little bit further down. So it's good to just help them to have a good process for that. Tell them when a big order has been paid and they could go mark it paid in Shopify and it will move out of pending balances then. Step 10 is just reconciling the other payment gateways. So we've already pushed across all the sales. We've reconciled the deposits from the bank account. And now the last part is just to do that fee journal for the fees for the payment processor, which you can get by looking at the statements that you've got from PayPal or Afterpay. If you've got a discrepancy on those accounts, those clearing accounts, it's usually either payment processing fees and you just need to put in a journal, or sometimes it can be a little bit related to currency, which again, we're going to speak about in a second. Review your pending payments. So there's two places I like to check these. There are basically two different scenarios where you'd usually see pending payments in Shopify. The first is what we just talked about, manual orders that haven't been marked paid yet. Those will stay in pending until the Shopify admin goes in and marks them paid. So what you want to do with that is you want to check them in Shopify. So with your Shopify access, you can go to orders and there's an option on the order screen to go to unpaid orders. And that'll tell you what your current orders are in Shopify that aren't marked as paid. And that's basically your true pending balance for the end of the month. Those A2X post those to an account called Shopify pending payments. And then when they mark them as paid in Shopify, it triggers another event and they get cleared out and they go to the payment method. But you do want to just keep a little bit of an eye on that. Pending payments are a thing with Shopify. The other scenario you sometimes see is if they've attached a third-party app that doesn't play nicely on the accounting side, and there are a few offenders there. They will sometimes generate pending payments because the app never finalizes a payment method on the order. So it never says, yes, this was paid by PayPal, or it never says this was paid by Klarna. When that happens, they do sit in pending. So we've got various workarounds for that, and we can quite a lot of the time what people will do, they'll see it, they'll identify it, they know they've got an issue with an app, and then they'll just adjust the pending payments to the P&L. But again, kind of a niche scenario. If you do get anything like that on your Shopify account, let us know because we've got some good information on it. Then you're going to review your chargebacks. Generally, if you are successful, so if a customer makes a dispute with the seller and it's successful, it usually comes in and back out again, so it's not really an issue. But if you've got one where the purchaser was successful, you may want to make an adjustment to that, to the P&L. And then the last step is just reviewing your currency conversions. If your seller is operating in multiple currencies, for example, they've got 3 different PayPal accounts, a Euro, a USD, and a GBP, you will inevitably have some small differences due to currency conversions. That particularly comes into play on the clearing accounts. For example, the PayPal clearing account. If that's the case, what you want to do is make sure that all of your gross sales are in, all of your bank deposits are in, and then you want to make sure that what you're seeing as a difference is reasonable for currency conversions, and then make an adjustment to gains and losses for currency based on that. it is inevitable with multi-currency and different systems having different rates and all kinds of things. If they are doing multi-currency, you will probably see some of that on the account. So don't be disconcerted by it. Okay, so after we've done all of these steps, we now have all of our sales in, we have all of our expenses in, we've done our COGS, so we've gotten that to our P&L. This is where we get to look at the final reports and see the results of everything that we've done. This is kind of the reward for doing all this work. You've got a nicely reconciled bank account, all your sales have gone to the right places, and you're in a really good place to be able to give your clients some information. It's really important to check these financial statements at the end of the period. Take a look at your profit and loss in your balance sheet, which like in Xero or QuickBooks, you can see that via reports. Check your revenue, expenses and overall numbers and make sure they all tally. Look back at that Shopify finance summary for just the sense check if you want to. Drill down into individual entries to sense check the transactions that are making up the numbers. That's one of the things I love about these cloud accounting packages, where you can just click on a number and drill down to see the actual transactions that got you to that number. And that's where your trained bookkeeper eye, you'll be able to spot anything that you think doesn't look right. So yeah, that's a really good thing to do. In addition, if this was a US Shopify store, obviously we'd probably just check the income statement and the balance sheet. But if you're UK and you're doing a VAT return, you're going to want to check your VAT report in detail. I really like looking at the transactions by tax rate view. Sometimes on an e-commerce account, a seller will get quite confused by all the reverse charges. You know that with Shopify fees, for example, with them being billed from Southern Ireland, it generates lots of reverse charge transactions. And they'll be like, why are these numbers this way? One thing I found that really helps is to export it by the tax rate and then just filter out all the reverse charges in Excel to get them back to the original transactions that are actually impacting the total VAT. So you check that. Again, you're doing the same thing. You're sense checking things, looking through the boxes, making sure everything makes sense to you with your own kind of understanding of VAT. So once you've got all these 3 reports ready, you're able to give your clients some really good information. You're able to give them a really accurate P&L to show how profitable they were for the period. You're able to show them what they've got on the balance sheet and where they stand in terms of inventory, etc., pending payments. You've covered every aspect from sales to inventory, and you've accurately accounted it all in your month-end statements. I saw this quote from Brittany Brown the other day from Ledger Gurus. I used her picture earlier on to describe the Shopify process. I thought this was brilliant, and I thought it was easily transferable to us as bookkeepers. Accounting does tell the story of the business, and good accounting tells an accurate story. If you follow all these steps for Shopify, you will get to a point where the reports that you produce will give your seller some really important information. They can make good decisions. They can see what's profitable, what isn't profitable. They truly understand how their business is working. It's a completely different story. If you skip those steps and you just post that bank deposit to sales, they're not having the accurate picture of how they're actually doing as a business at that time. So that's why we recommend going through it in such detail and really doing a good job on that month-end process. Okay, so I think I've done a lot of talking now, and I hope you guys are not feeling overwhelmed. As I say, we've got lots of resources on all these topics available. I can send you. There's no paywall. You can just go and read them. We're happy to share them with you. I might hand over to Natasha for a couple of minutes because I feel like I've done a lot of talking.
No, that's been quite informative. And I think it does look very overwhelming from the outside in. But I think, like you said, take your time, go through the process. And the more you do it, the more simpler it becomes. And I like the way that it's a step-by-step process. And if you follow that process, then you're going to be sort of right all the time. And that to me is kind of like reassuring, because I think we undervalue how important to get Shopify and similar payment platforms correct, because I've often seen when I've taken over bookkeeping clients that they've just been automatically, the receipts into the bank have often just been put to sales. So it hasn't accounted for it correctly. So I like your process, how it clearly defines the steps to do it.
Yeah, I think it's so good. And I think as bookkeepers, we really appreciate a checklist because
Yeah.
you can break everything down into a step, do this, do this, do this, do this, and then you get your end result. Whereas if you just think about it, it can be overwhelming because there are a lot of different pieces, especially with Shopify. As I say, this is the most complicated platform. So if you can master this one, you'll find Amazon is a walk in the park compared to this. Amazon can be a bit more complicated on the VAT side, but
Yeah.
in terms of the actual reconciliation, it's a lot more straightforward.
And I think anybody wanting to get into this market, Shopify, like you say, is a good way to actually use as a bouncing point for your marketing to get clients, because it is one of the biggest payment platforms out there for e-commerce, and a lot of shops use it as well. Like if they have like a normal shop front, they often sell their products online. So it's a really good way of getting new clients as well. If you can become an expert in something, if you have the knowledge that you have somebody behind you to help you. So like you guys, A2X, if you know that you are going to be going into that field and you have a step-by-step guide, but if you get stuck, you have a network of kind of people and community to help you go on the right track, then it's a really empowering thing for actually niching in this area.
Yeah, and I really try and stress that with UK bookkeepers and accountants, because if you join the partner program and it's totally free to join, you then get access to one-to-one onboarding with the UK team. And all of the people on the UK team pretty much are accountants and bookkeepers themselves, and are really knowledgeable about UK requirements. So the benefit of that is you could do 2 setups with with the onboarding team, and probably after you've done a couple, you'll then feel really confident to roll that out to other customers. It's quite scalable. So I always like to just say that we offer that so that people know you don't have to pay extra for that. That's about us equipping you to be really good at it. Because we've never been about eliminating people's accountants and bookkeepers. A lot of us are accountants and bookkeepers.
Yeah.
We think that's actually really important. We think successful businesses, the ones we see that are the most successful, have a really good accountant or bookkeeper at the head of the finance team.
No, that's brilliant. It's like a partnership. So obviously when you're with A2X, it's like a partnership in your business, like you do with any kind of software. So that kind of support really takes a lot of the anxiety away, because looking at it from the outside in at the moment, that could actually trigger so much stress of actually dealing with that. But because it's so clear and set by, don't move on to the next step unless you've got this. And I can see that how important it is to actually have access yourself to get this information, because half the time the clients won't understand what information you need. And that's where I think a lot of the problems come from, is not being able to communicate correctly with the clients what information they've got, because all they want to see is the revenue at the end of the month in the bank.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I sort of got to the point with my bookkeeping side where I wouldn't take on a client unless I had access, because I knew that in order to do a really good job, I needed to be able to download payouts and do things like that and manipulate data if necessary. So I actually think that's a really good little boundary line to have, to just say, actually, I really do need the access.
I've got a current client, and they've recently taken on a Shopify loan and used Shopify. So they have been sending me reports, but I don't think it's the right reports. So this is where I'm now going to use this as a benchmark to set mine up, because I'm going to go back to her this afternoon and ask whether she'd grant me access so that I can actually pull these reports off and set A2X up to do the hard work for me, so that all I have to do is basically reconcile it. So make sure it is what it is, because that's what you're doing. You're actually making the software give you superpowers to basically pull the right information in, but still leaving you the power to reconcile it, to make sure it is what it is, which is, I think, quite empowering. Really is.
It is. Hopefully, we're trying to get you to the point where you can see the numbers and you're becoming, you're offering more advisory services than you are 45 minutes doing a spreadsheet to reconcile one Shopify payout.
Exactly. And I can see the cost of goods thing, because at the moment, my clients all have complex Excel spreadsheets. And a lot of it is downloaded from their website. So website sales, they put them through that, and then it's just somebody done some hyperlinks and formulas that 9 times out of 10 are old formulas that haven't worked and haven't updated themselves, so you're having to double check. This is where I can see the integration of one of my biggest clients may actually benefit them time saving as well. It won't actually just save them money by getting that information in a real-time information. We can actually do monthly adjustments for stock rather than annual. It will be real-time information, and it's going to be time saving and money saving for them.
Yeah, and it is a good little stopgap, so you can toggle it on and off again. In A2X, you can use it or you cannot use it. It's completely separate from the main settlement postings. The
Yeah.
nice thing about that is, say you've got to catch up a year and you just want to get the cogs as best you can for that whole period. You just catch it all up, and then you can switch it off if they're going to migrate to Unleashed or something like that. So yeah, it's quite neat. I mean, tell us a bit more about some of your inventory. What kind of tools are your clients using right now, or is it all spreadsheet?
It's all spreadsheets, and my biggest client is the one that has thousands of transactions a month, quite a large online retailer, but they also have a small shop as well. So it can be quite complex. And previously they've had their website directly connected to QuickBooks, and it's duplicated transactions, it's multiplied, it's not pulled all the information. It's been horrendous. So we've gone down to basics with it because it wants rebuilding back up to the fact where we're confident that the right connection is with QuickBooks. So it's always been at the moment with their stock control is they've done a manual stock control. They've had somebody go round each month, double checking, and then it's been uploaded against what the sales have been against that product code. So it's very arduous, very long-winded, but at the time, their systems that they had, they paid a lot of money for online resources, somebody to do it, and it didn't quite get the picture. And I think we find that in a lot of places that and then they grew quicker than they actually realised as well.
Yeah, that happens too. And it is important to plan ahead for scalability, because we see that quite a lot where there'll be an integration that's sending through individual invoices, which seems like a really good idea at the time. But the problem is it does, as you've exactly described, it doesn't scale because you can't actually match those back to the amount that hit the bank easily, because there'll be other transactions like fees and disputes and holds and loan
that was the problem. They were pulling through daily sales invoices, and with the added problem of PayPal thrown into it as well, which PayPal never reconciles very nicely. And plus other things, they have ClearPay, they have Klarna, they have all these other factors. None of it will reconcile. This is where I have to have clearing accounts for most of the things, because not the correct information is coming through, and it's a nightmare. So this is why I am going to be totally revamping things like this and future clients with projects such as A2X to make my life a little bit easier, but make the client's life so much simpler, because they know that the right information is going in there the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does what we found, it's scalable. So it means that they can use QuickBooks or Xero or Sage for much longer than they otherwise could, because otherwise I think Xero's upper soft limit on contacts is 10,000.
Yeah.
So a busy e-commerce seller can max that out in an incredibly short time. And I have seen Xero accounts with more than 10,000 contacts and they're still running.
Yeah.
But by all accounts, it does impact performance. So
I mean, I'm finding at the moment any software has its own limits, although they don't say. And I think having more knowledge about how to deal with it rather than switching softwares is the key thing. So the having the thousands of customers does not work. It's more the fact that you want the right sales, because you think most of these e-commerce ones, some of these customers are only probably one-time sales. So you don't need to have that interaction with the customers kind of thing. Yes, if it's a recurring customer and they're high value, I totally get it. But if they're little customers that only pay 1 or 2 orders probably a couple of years, then it's not needed. And this is where it's great to actually stop and have a review of all your processes that you do with any kind of bookkeeping, not just e-commerce. It's good to stop every so often, review the process you're doing. Is the software working right for you? Are you working right for the software? Have you checked all the updates and things like that? This is the thing. It's being a bookkeeper in our industry at the moment is so exciting, because we are in a massive change of evolution, and we need to really keep up with that. And I'm a great believer of that. You should make yourself a client of the business. So you should make yourself a time that you give yourself time each week or month, whatever you can, to work on your business, like reviewing your software, get to do all the updates, have conversations with the software provider, see what updates that's coming, what's on the roadmap, see what that can help your clients going forward. So it's not actually what happens now, but it's what happens in the future as well. So it's all about investing in the right software, the right people, and yourself.
I think that's such good advice, because it's so easy to just get caught up in the immediate work that's in front of you, especially if you've got quite a successful practice. It's easy to just go from task to task, but taking a step back and just reviewing your whole big picture approach, I think that's really good advice.
Especially as a sole practitioner, you need to do that. You've got nobody else to rely on apart from you, and you're doing everything for your client. So it's where you do look as software as your employee, you look at software as your support, the people who introduce you to the software as your real connection, to make sure that you're running. When you get the software, you're not taking months to install it and learn it, like with resources that A2X are going to provide that are free on their website and just look at. It makes the fact that you can actually read up before you even take this client on, so you can ask the right questions on the sign up when you have that initial chat with your clients. Would you give me access to this? Do you know how to get that if you don't give me access? So it's the vital questions that really help you come on your A game with them, basically make them think you're an expert and that you can actually fulfill the job really well, because you're already knowing the right questions to ask them.
I get really excited about that, and now one of the accounts that works at A2X Iona, she talks about that because she's been with them from quite from the beginning. It's actually really exciting when you have one-to-one meetings with partners, and then they're going off and rolling this out to different clients, and then you're seeing that actually they're so growing in their confidence as e-commerce accountants and bookkeepers, and feeling that they actually have, they have all this knowledge now that they can just go in and help clients run successful businesses.
And I must admit, e-commerce bookkeeping is totally different to bog standard bookkeeping. It's not something you learn in textbooks. It's one that you have to learn in the field, on the go, and with the experts, such as the expert software providers. So it is a very specialized but very rewarding field to get in if your brain can handle it. And I think the simple process is like having a checklist, run through the checklist every time you reconcile. So whether it's weekly, monthly, quarterly, whatever, go through the checklist, and then you can stop any issues before it gets even escalates.
Yeah, exactly. That is the thing. It's so much harder if it's been left a year and then you're going back and trying to do it. It's definitely possible, but it's much harder. If you have a beautiful, a nice clean month-end process, it'll help you sleep better at night.
It will. So e-commerce is very, very interesting. It's really techy and really fun by the looks of it. It's like a bank reconciliation that's gone wrong on steroids. I think that's how I'm going to leave it.
Yeah. All right, brilliant. Well, really nice to talk to you again today, Natasha, and thanks everyone for joining. We haven't had any additional questions, but we have had a little chat and talked about a few things, so I think that's good. So yeah, if I can help with anything or sending any resources or anything, please email me, elspeth@a2xaccounting.com, and I'm sure Natasha will be around on the Facebook group if you want to talk to her.
Okay, thank you everybody for attending, and thank you Elspeth for organising this. Really appreciate it.
Thanks everyone. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.